Welcome to the New Jersey Amistad Curriculum Podcast, the show where we explore the resources and best practices for teaching African and African American history in the K-12 curriculum in New Jersey. We aim to highlight outstanding educational practitioners and their strategies and challenges in meeting the Amistad mandate. I'm your host, Dr. J.T. Mills, a member of the New Jersey Amistad Commission. In this edition of the Amistad Podcast, we will provide an overview of the Amistad Commission and explore the Commission's purpose and mission as we dive into why the teaching of authentic and accurate contributions of African and African Americans in New Jersey, the local region, nationally and globally, is so vitally crucial to students' academic maturity to become citizens in an increasingly diverse society. The New Jersey Amistad Commission is considered unique and a pioneering model in the U.S. for its comprehensive, legally mandated, and statewide approach to integrating African American history and the African diaspora across the K-12 curriculum in all subjects, not just social studies, a requirement strengthened by recent legislation. While other states have mandates, New Jersey's robust commission, specific funding, and infusion across all courses make it stand out as a significant, if sometimes under-resourced, effort to ensure a more complete American history is taught. Today, we will hear from the Madam Chair of the Amistad Commission to strengthen your knowledge of the Amistad legislation and the Commission's resources that are accessible to teachers in New Jersey. With that said, I would like to introduce Dr. Lillie Johnson Edwards to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mills. It's wonderful to be here and to serve as chair of the New Jersey Amistad Commission and to serve the educators and students and communities of the state of New Jersey.
Great. And so, can you provide our listeners with an overview of how the Amistad Bill became a mandate in New Jersey?
I'd be happy and honored to briefly tell that story. The New Jersey Amistad legislation first introduced to our legislature in 2002 and passed with support of both sides of the aisle, really was the idea and work and legislation of Assemblyman Craig Stanley and Assemblyman William D. Payne. Assemblyman Payne was a passionate and committed advocate of the educational excellence of all the children of New Jersey. And he understood and championed, as many people who have seen him will know, championed with vigor the inclusion of African Americans into the New Jersey curriculum. He was passionate in telling his personal stories about the exclusion of African Americans in his own educational background. And he understood the importance of what it means for all the children of New Jersey to see, both for the state as well as for the nation and the globe, an inclusion of all people, an understanding of all people, and an appreciation of all people. So we have him to thank, along with Assemblyman Stanley, for introducing this legislation, getting it passed, and then Assemblyman Payne continued to be an advocate as a member of the Amistad Commission.
Very good. So how was the commission formed and what is it charged to do?
That actually is a really big question because next year, 2027, we'll be celebrating our 25th year. Okay. So a lot has happened in the past 24. A lot of wonderful things have happened. Some of them have to do with the commission figuring out how to do our work most effectively and efficiently. Of course, making a good use and prudent use of taxpayer dollars to do this work, and also listening to and learning from our esteemed educators, K through 12 educators in New Jersey. The commission began under the Secretary of State's office, but we quickly moved, I believe in something like 4 or 5 years, moved from the Department of State to the Department of Education. And that was a critical move because what it did was to signal that our commission was not a commission focused on events or commemorations or programs. Rather, in our work, we sought to empower the educators of the state of New Jersey, to partner with the educators of the state of New Jersey, to ensure that our students were fully prepared to be informed and empathetic and committed citizens and residents of the United States and citizens of the world. And so we began to create a curriculum. We began by looking at textbooks to see if textbooks, in fact, provided the kind of inclusion we were proposing. We found that in higher education, that inclusion had occurred decades ago, that any U.S. history textbook by the year 2002 really did have this very robust inclusion, some more than others, but higher ed U.S. history textbooks had leaned into a kind of inclusion really since the 1970s. And what we discovered, there's little or no trickle down to K through 12 or to high school and middle school textbooks. Very little at all. They sustained a kind of focus on the power structures without giving sufficient textbook time and teaching and learning time to people who were supposedly on the margins of society, but we know were really always at the center.
Mhm.
And so we decided to create our own curriculum. We wanted, again, to be prudent in the use of taxpayer dollars. And of course, by the 2000s, it was a smart move, I believe, to move to an online curriculum rather than creating textbooks. We also realized that we were for textbooks, we would be pushing up against states much larger than New Jersey, with a lot more clout with publishing houses, that we might not have the kind of leverage to get the kind of textbooks that we wanted. And so we went that independent route of creating our own curriculum, a web-based curriculum, which itself has gone through several iterations and now is a phenomenal resource for teachers, but open to anyone. Anyone in the public can go on and see the work we're doing. The other important step that we took was to ensure that our curriculum was aligned with the social studies standards of the state of New Jersey, and also that the social studies standards were aligned with the legislative mandate. And so we actually worked on both sides of creating our own curriculum, but we also reviewed and revised the social studies standards themselves. And then finally, I'll point out two major changes, again, that occurred during these early years. The other critical important change was that we hired an executive director. We realized that we actually had work for the professional development of educators, for creating resources, for administering the website, and we needed an administrator within the office to really carry out that day-to-day work. And then the other piece I'm most proud of, that the first executive director, Dr. Karen Jackson Weaver, and I created a summer institute for teachers modeled on the National Endowment for the Humanities Teacher Institutes. These institutes, which as we'll talk about later, which now will be held again in 2026, of course. The institutes were created as an opportunity for teachers to both learn cutting edge scholarship in the inclusion of African Americans in the curriculum, to also collaborate and learn from each other the best practices and pedagogies for teaching this material to their students, to, again, I use the word over and over again, to empower our teachers. And then also to recognize that many teachers have been doing this kind of work without a mandate, because they knew it was the best education for all of their students. And so it became an opportunity for teachers to learn as educators and scholars, and then also to be recognized for their work.
Very good. So that summer institute sort of serves as a education for the educators?
Exactly. It serves as It serves as an education for the educators. One of the ways Dr. Jackson Weaver and I envisioned it was as a graduate school seminar
Okay.
where teachers are learning from experts and scholars in the field on various topics, have a chance to discuss and have Q&A and robust kind of debate over hard history, as people will call it. But the other piece that was critical for me was that teachers also learn from each other. No one knows how to, in fact, engage our students, to inspire our students, and to impart knowledge to our students than the teachers themselves. And so it's very important to me in creating the Summer Institute that it would also bring in teachers as the experts in pedagogy. Now that I have this wonderful knowledge and information, we wanted to ensure teachers knew what options there were for them to share this information with students in ways that would be inspiring and connect, of course, to the social studies standards, and give teachers this kind of array of options of how they might use these materials in the classroom. Um, one of the things that I was always aware of, we continually ask teachers to do more, right? We ask them to do more with the same resources, same amount of time,
Yeah.
sometimes larger classrooms. I mean, it's challenging. And so the approach with the Institute, as well as with the web-based curriculum and our professional development work, was really to be able to say to teachers, we are your partners, we are your cheerleaders, we are your supporters. And more recently, I started to think in terms of saying to teachers, what do you need from us? What can we provide for you? How can we empower you? How can we make your job more inspiring, so that teachers understood, and the Summer Institute becomes the kind of pinnacle of this kind of approach. We wanted teachers to understand we are not adding to the enormity of your work that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
We actually are supporting that.
Very good. So, given the state of affairs we are in this country now, or the present day, how do you get someone to reconcile African American history versus being touted as a DEI initiative? How do we decipher that?
Just in several ways. One way is to, I think, should be very clear to most Americans, and that is we are teaching our students what it means to be citizens and residents of the nation and citizens of the world. And with that, I would propose, and I think that the commission would as well, that our children cannot understand, appreciate, and fully participate and understand their role as citizens and residents of the country and the world if they do not have the information about our actual history.
Mm-hmm.
It means, to me, it also means that the less you know, the higher the chance that you won't participate. The less you know, and the more you know, the more engaged you are, the more informed you are, the better you ask better questions of the nation and the world. And here's the thing, Dr. Mills. I think it also gives our students a better sense of themselves and their own place in the nation and in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It means they not only see themselves, and this is for all students, they not only see themselves, but they see themselves as part of a larger community, whether that's their town or the county or the state or the nation or the world. We want our students to know you have a voice and a place in determining what that future will be. And that future engages every human being in the state of New Jersey, the nation, and the world. And so you need to know, as my faith asks, who is my neighbor, right?
Mhm.
You need to know who is your neighbor. You need to know the history of your neighbor. You need to know the culture, the contributions of your neighbor. And that is all inclusive. It
Mhm.
is African Americans and all people of African descent. It includes Native peoples, indigenous peoples. It includes European immigrants who came to this country with a variety of stories and histories. The other thing this history, the inclusion of this history does, it does not divide, which is, I think, the very false and dangerous assertion of those who purport that DEI somehow is undemocratic and un-American.
Mhm.
Because what inclusion says is that I will not only learn, see, and understand my neighbor, I can also have empathy for my neighbor,
Right.
that I can put myself in someone else's shoes. Let me tell you a very brief story. I
Mhm.
was leading a foreign studies program semester abroad in Kenya for one of the universities where I taught. It was a full semester program. There were 21 students. One of the students was African American. And at the end of the program, as part of our preparation to come back into the country, we asked, what do you look forward to in coming back to the United States? The students, except the African American student and me, all of the other students said, oh, I look forward to just being invisible and people not
Right.
pointing at me and people. And the African American student and I said, that's not what we look forward to, because in the United States, we are pointed at and we are under the gaze and we're under the microscope
Right.
all the time. And what I said to my students in that session, I said, if you remember nothing else from this semester abroad, for the rest of your life, I want you to walk into a room and be aware of who is the person who has experienced what you just described. Is it the person in the wheelchair? Is it the
Right.
person of a different ethnicity or nationality? Is it the person with a different accent? Is it the person, right, whoever it is in that room
Mhm.
who feels marginalized, you have some sense of what that feels like. And one student pointed out, and Kenyans like us, and we still felt
Mm.
under the microscope and uncomfortable. And so I want for every student in New Jersey to have that kind of empathy through the stories that history tells.
Mhm.
And they should have that empathy for the African and African American experience, for the Irish experience, for the Italian and Catholic experience, for the Native experience, because that broadens and deepens their own humanity and understanding of themselves. And so, which is what history is supposed to do, that it taps into our own humanity. It does not separate, rather, it broadens and deepens who we are, because we now know our neighbor.
Mhm.
That would be my response about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Very good. And with that, then, and because this phrase now that I'm sort of adopting most of my career has been in higher ed. And so now in the last year or so that I've been doing, been on the commission doing the actual work and seeing so much of the disconnect between K-12 and higher ed very upfront. You used the phrase hard history. And well, for those that may not view or understand that phrase, how would you describe that? And then how would you describe that as far as, or what would you suggest to future educators, our young future educators, our teacher candidates about how to deal with teaching hard history?
It's interesting, Dr. Mills. I was thinking about that earlier, but just as you posed the question, it occurred to me that all history is hard history. And the reason why it's hard history is because we're talking about human beings.
Mm.
We're talking about fallible, messy, inconsistent human beings who are infinitely imperfect
Right.
in every situation throughout our history. We are always talking about just how messy we are and that we create messy institutions and make really bad decisions because we are all human. And
Mm,
that list of human fallibility looks the same throughout time, right? The context is different. History never repeats itself. Please, everyone take note. It can't repeat itself. The contexts are completely different.
mhm,
But who we are as human beings really is universal. And so when I say hard history, I'm saying that students need to know the truth about humanity and their own humanity. When my students would sometimes ask me, well, did African Americans or enslaved people do this or do that? My response to my student was, do people do that? Right? Kind of somehow humanity throughout time or location or nationality or ethnicity or religion isn't any different. And I think that what we see, for example, in the kindergartner and the first grader who are asking over and over and over again the question, why,
mm,
about everything,
right.
non-stop, is the essence of hard history. And so as we look at any people's story, in this case, African and African American stories, we are always asking the question, why? It's also at the heart of what I said earlier about the civics lessons embedded into this history. It also, for this particular context, I think it also takes us to a space where the founders of the country understood that the work of a democracy, specifically this one, was inevitably hard work, and that sustaining a democracy was very fragile and problematic. And then we add on top of that, we had a democracy that was also founded on the enslavement of Black people and the movement and extermination of Indigenous people.
Mhm,
And a lot of discrimination within that of poor and working class whites. All of that was at play at the same time at the founding of this country and in the colonial era. And so when you look at the founding of the nation, the founders themselves knew that it was messy, it was hard, and that even creating this nation, right, was hard and it was messy. I know we teach the American Revolution and the founding of the nation as if it were kind of something that was just presented all complete and beautiful and
right.
finished. But it was never that, right? And so what we need our students to see in themselves, in their own lives, and in their future, that they have responsibilities to work on what this nation and the world will be. They have an obligation to ask question after question. They have an obligation to read not one source, but two sources, but three
Mhm,
sources and figure out what is the truth. They need to read and listen and debate and understand that there may be competing truths that
right.
live in the same space, right? And so that kind of depth of thinking, the depth of feeling is what I think this African American inclusion does for the students in New Jersey, and would say this is exactly what every state in the country should be doing.
And in that regard, uh, the future educators, I think it's, I'm not being disparaging in saying this, and this because it's across the country, not just New Jersey. For the most part, in the K-12 system, these are young women, Caucasian or white, who may not have in their formative years experienced growing up around people who did not look like them. And then we
Exactly.
we ask them to then take on the challenge of trying to relay this hard history and what would you say to maybe an incoming cohort? Because one of the things that we're doing for this
Mhm.
coming summer institute is we're going to try to have a pre-service or future educators cohort. What words of advice would you have for somebody who's going to be a future teacher?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Areas where the commission understood that it needed to do more work is in that teacher preparation space. And that in some ways it's unfair, right, to train teachers who then have this excellent training and come into the classroom, and we're expecting of them an inclusion for which they have not been trained, just as you have described. And so I applaud our executive director, Dr. Lammy, and you, Dr. Mills, and all of the other staff and leadership for including teachers and training in this year's Summer Institute and moving forward. I do think that there are some institutions that are in New Jersey that are creating models for inclusion of this kind of training in an inclusive curriculum for its future teachers. I know Fairleigh Dickinson is in fact doing that
Okay.
kind of work, and there may be others as well that will provide us with a model that could be used throughout the state of New Jersey. But I think right now, the work that the commission itself is starting to do is really the core of ensuring that teachers in preparation receive some training before they enter into the classroom. And I'm hoping that the commission itself can do even more, perhaps working in collaboration with other commissions on their work
Mhm.
for inclusion as well, such as working with the Holocaust Commission, where we've had partnerships in the past in this work, so that new teachers walk into the classroom fully prepared to do this work.
So, with that in mind, what are some of the goals and objectives of the commission that you would like to share with folks?
Well, I'll start with the biggest challenge
Okay.
in terms of the goals. And of course, citizens of New Jersey will understand this challenge. And that is we have about 600 school districts.
Right.
Every time I think about it or say it, it's like this mountain just rose in front of me. It's almost impossible to climb. Having so many school districts makes it very challenging for the commission's limited staff to reach 600 school districts. Under Dr. Lemmy's leadership as executive director, and with all of you coming on as staff, we are better equipped to be able to reach teachers. And with the new website and web-based curriculum, I think that virtual teaching does a lot of benefits teachers in a very powerful way, as does the Summer Institute and year-long professional development. But one of the key areas of work is really to reach all of those 600 districts and to ensure, as I said earlier, that teachers actually have the resources they need for the content knowledge as well as the pedagogy for delivery in the classroom. I think the second piece that we are trying to do to some degree is to continue the system of rewarding teachers and school districts
Okay.
for doing exemplary work. And so there are several exemplary awards that we have. The one that was created back at the beginning of the commission awarded teachers and a school for doing exemplary work. And we now have an award that is fortunately given by the governor's office. There is an Amistad Award established in the executive branch where we play a role in selecting the awardees. In addition to that, we now are recognizing students and student work that is presented at our Summer Institute. These are students who have presented projects for National History Day and in other venues, and they receive now, some of them will be awarded an Amistad Award as well. And so on both ends, both the providing the content knowledge as well as pedagogy, and then now working with students to ensure we see, in some ways, the fruits of our labor, right?
Mhm.
That we see what the students are doing with this information and how inspired they are as young scholars in doing this inclusive work. We are also now, through our strategic plan that we're working through line by line, working on including more partners throughout New Jersey and in the community, libraries, museums, civic organizations, historical societies, and also collaborations with the other New Jersey commissions to do this work so that we have more partners to, again, try and cover those 600 plus school districts. And we know that there are members of the community, organizations in the community that have been our supporters all along, and we're creating structures where those partnerships can be more effective.
That's very good, and it sounds like the commission it's got a heavy burden on it, and the work is being met, or at least certainly myself and the other new staff members, we're trying to lift that up and expand our ability to be out there to really educate, not only educate the educators, but one of my things that I'm looking at is because most of my career was in higher ed. And my dissertation was about centered on how do we reduce some of the basic skills needs for some of our students, especially those that are coming from underserved K-12 systems going into higher education and then starting off in debt. And one of those areas that I started to explore in the dissertation was the lack of, especially males in education. And is that something the commission or people that you deal with are talking about? Because I think for me, that is one of the avenues I think would help to be able to have our young people experience this information from individuals who look like them.
Yes. So one of the things that the listeners may know is that there is this precipitous decline in the number of African American males attending college in particular. In fact, in general, the number of males attending college, but especially African American males, which for African Americans really does shift the entire trajectory potentially of one's life,
Mm,
of that college degree. And so one of the things that the commission is taking on, especially as we expand that primary and elementary, those materials and pedagogies in particular, is to provide kind of learning tools that we think will be particularly powerful for these lower grades. One of the statistics that always sticks in my head and heart is the ability to read, right, by
mhm,
third grade. And we know that in many ways, the multiple studies, statistics have shown this for decades, that without that ability to read by third grade, a child's life is changed.
mm,
And for me, that becomes a kind of, it's a deal breaker that what we should be doing as an entire nation is just investing heavily in that one disha,
mhm,
because without that one, everything else falls apart, right? And so one of the things this commission is doing is creating new materials and pathways to particularly engage those younger children, whether it's um, history games, history projects,
mhm.
history comic books, graphic arts, using these new tools, some of them virtual tools, but some of them hands on, to engage children who in the past, at best, were just invisible and at worst, were targeted.
Mhm.
Targeted either as being incapable of learning or targeted as a problem.
Right.
So either targeted or ignored, and neither one of those allow for learning.
Right.
Neither one of those allow for a child's humanity to be affirmed, uplifted, and even empowered. The applause that we all desire should be heaped on little kids. They should know they are absolutely phenomenal and wonderful people.
Right.
And unfortunately, some children don't get that applause and then don't feel that they deserve it either. And so I think the commission's work in creating a more diverse pool of resources to tap into the joy of learning that we know is there in the 2 and 3 and 4-year-old, right? The kind of almost infinite desire to know, to ask why, to explore everything in their sight and in their grasp. We're trying to create those kind of tools in the Amistad curriculum to incite love of learning. And as you have pointed out, Dr. Mills, a love of self.
Very good. So we have just about 2 more minutes left. What would be, if you were to walk away or left the commission, what legacy for you as the Madam Chair would you like to leave or have um, in that context?
Actually have been thinking about Dr. Mills. It's funny you should ask me that question. I mean, some of the milestones I mentioned earlier are
Hmm.
ones which I think are critical to ensuring that the work we're doing makes a difference in a child's life, because that's what's really important. Kind of, is a child's educational experience so rich and so full that they are able to experience life more fully and more deeply,
Hmm.
that they carry this into their adulthood and actually makes a profound difference in their world. And so I think what's most important for me, as you probably could tell, is the Summer Institute
Okay.
that Dr. Jackson Weaver and I created. And what I've seen happen under Dr. Lammy's leadership and all of you as staff members with things like this podcast coming on is that and I think it's true for what I hope is true for me as a caring servant leader. And that is, the Institute is now even greater than I had ever imagined it to
Hmm.
be. And so, the legacy I would like to leave is that that continues to happen, that it becomes increasingly wonderful and impactful without me in the room at all. The second thing that was especially important to me, and you see, I'm actually naming the things I helped start, so I hope that doesn't
That's right.
appear to be a selfish approach. But I do want to see school districts, students, and educators being rewarded, recognized, and applauded for excellent work, and that educators, students can also serve as role models for others. Then we create a kind of educators teaching educators
Right.
and students teaching students. Because then that creates a kind of ripple effect that begins to address the challenge of the 600 school districts. Because then we have all of these ambassadors out there doing this work with us. And I think the final piece that I know is in some ways just beginning, we've done a little bit of it, but I hope it becomes more robust, and that is collaborative work with other commissions. Because in many ways, we are posing the same questions about inclusion,
Hmm.
the same questions about the messiness of human beings creating a nation or institutions. And how do we do it well? How do human beings correct their mistakes?
Hmm.
How do we have empathy for our neighbors? And so I would think those three things I hope will be the legacy of my work and leadership with the commission.
I want to say thank you for joining us on today's episode. I certainly would like to, uh, especially at the Institute, have you be part of a group of panel or another version of this podcast. I think I have a few things in my mind about how we can relay this information and really collaborate with some of the other commissions that you spoke of. So I may be reaching out to you again very here soon in the future to do that, because I think that everybody has a story. And to me, that's what history is. And I have to be very honest with you. Growing up in my K-12 experience, I did not like history. I was one of those kids that was like, why do we got to know this? That already happened. But now, I teach African American history. Now I wouldn't necessarily call myself a historian, but I'm engaged, which is where I would like to see other people like myself just be engaged. I mean, you don't have to be an expert necessarily, because we all do have our own story. And to me, history is nothing more than sharing stories, and to work across the different commissions to see those different perspectives and experiences, I think is what it's all about. So again, thank you for joining us today, and I will be calling on you again in the near future.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you so very much for having me, and thank you for taking leadership on creating these podcasts. I think they will be very important for the state of New Jersey to hear various ideas and to hear about the work of the commission and to bring on multiple voices for our communities to hear about this important work. So thank you very much, Dr. Mills.
You are quite welcome. And that will conclude our show for today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. You can reach the Commission with any questions or inquiries about how you can contribute to this effort to Amistad SP at doe.nj.gov. This is the New Jersey Amistad Podcast, brought to you in partnership with the New Jersey Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association, the New Jersey Association of School Administrators, the statewide Parent Advocacy Network, the Garden State Coalition of Schools, and the New Jersey Leadership for Educational Excellence.